I'm Lauren,
I'm Kate.
and we want to talk about inner work for entrepreneurs and leaders.
Indeed,
Yeah,
because it's so amazing.
and it's so important. And Kate has taught me a great deal about this. And I don't say this about many things. It has really changed my life in profound ways. And yeah, so Kate, why don't you start by telling people what we mean by inner work?
The I actually used inner work to define inner work, and what I got was that inner work is ways of working that are interior, based in intuition, intention, perception, and consciousness. It's a lot of different things rolled into one basket, and they are, but what they all share is that they're about the invisible interior dimension, the voices inside our head, the feelings in our guts, the the way we can shift in a nanosecond because of seeing, for example, the glass half full instead of half empty, or or being able to shift how we're feeling in the moment because we take a little bit of time to get centered and grounded.
Hmm.
I, yeah.
So, one of the things I'd love to address right off the top
Mm-hmm.
is that I find it hard when I'm talking about inner work not to cross the woo woo threshold. You know what I mean? Like, there's people who instantly get kind of their shoulders raised up. They kind of go, oh God, is she going to start talking about tarot cards and stuff like that? And it can go there if that's your comfort zone, but it doesn't need to be about that. And it's actually not. It's not just about that. It's like in the Venn diagram of this. There's some overlap maybe, but it's not.
I
This is
think
its own circle.
yes.
You know what I mean?
I think it's real. That's very powerful. I think we have known, and I think a lot of people quietly use inner work without talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
That people have intuitive feelings about who would be the right person to hire or whether or not this is the right lead to follow,
Mm-hmm.
and they are paying attention to their intuition, but you might not say so in a board meeting, or
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
you might have. So then you bring in your rational reasons for doing things rather than using saying my intuition is. And yet that inner guidance system that I believe every one of us has, not all of us listen, not all of us are aware of the signals that we're getting. That inner guidance system is unbelievably powerful and really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would go so far as to say unerring. That in my experience, I've been playing with this for over 20 years. I have never had a bum steer from my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Um, and it may have taken me a little while to realize, in retrospect, how something that I started towards seemed right, and then it seemed catastrophically wrong, and then it became clear that it was right again. Uh, in that deeper, you could say 2020 hindsight tautology, but I have found it staggeringly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to work with it consciously instead of just by accident.
Yeah, I think that's the key because I think it's about naming it and bringing it forward and including it in the picture of how we make decisions and how we work. And one of the things that really drew me to your work is that um, you are a deeply rational human being also, and you care a lot about getting the right data and inputs and all of that stuff. And so it's about integrating.
Right.
It's about integrating the outer work and the inner work, and that I think is critical.
Yeah, yeah. I think of it as that it's like having 2 feet or 2 legs to walk, and if we're only walking with our rational side, then we have to hop. Right? But if we can bring in the intuitive and the power of the interior dimension, then we can run like way faster and with way more joy and grace and ease.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't. You're so right. It isn't about throwing out the analytical or the research side or the all of the brilliance of our ability to understand through through reflection and analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's. And there are people who will say that intuition is simply like a sort of a supercomputer way of distilling what we know.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something beyond that, because personally, I've intuited things that I had no way of knowing,
Mm-hmm.
literally no way of knowing, and they weren't like a distillation of things I already knew. It was, like I've intuited which knee my husband had hurt at a distance of 500 feet. I knew 500 miles rather. I knew by tuning in. I knew which knee it was, and he hadn't said anything. So that's a trivial example, but it is something that I think part of why I think it's important is that it cracks us into a deeper humility, that we have amazing capacities, and there's something that if we can open to it is a gift that can come to support us in our work, and that we don't have to we don't have to lift each piece and move each piece. We can take leaps and we can fly if we're willing to open and trust what comes to us intuitively. Yeah.
So when you're working with people and teaching people about inner work, what's one way that you help them to access that? Can you share a technique for getting in touch with your inner knowing?
Your inner knowing. Well, those are two questions in a way,
right?
Because the how do I help people get in touch is by inviting people to recognize how many ways they already are in touch, and haven't valued it or haven't paid attention. So to invite people to recall a time when they had a gut feeling about something, that language tends to resonate.
Yeah.
Or to invite people to reflect on a time when they were caught in a storm, for example, like caught in some mental agitation, and something came into their awareness. Maybe it was an email that just invited a completely different way of seeing something, and everything shifted. So that's another kind of what I would call inner work, in that you're shifting something on the interior that's based, in that case, with a shift in perception. So to sort of reverse engineer it, one of the ways that I work with people is to play with framing. So to invite people to imagine a situation that's really, really difficult for them, and to talk about it with somebody else, or write about it so that they've got it kind of written down. That, I'm stuck with my boss, and it's this kind of situation,
right.
that whatever it is, and how you're seeing it, and then invite them to take a walk and to notice what catches their attention. When they have the intention of that walk of in some way seeing their situation differently. People, this works. I've done it in lots and lots and lots of contexts. Their attention will be called to something, and not everybody, but most people, and that something, if they kind of open to it, will be like a key that helps them see their situation in a different way. And that would be a practice that's kind of mushing something that I call reframing, and another practice that I call flirts. And it's putting those two together, and that's if you want the 30-second cure for a challenging situation, that's something you can do, and the taste of it, of that shift, how powerful it is. It's really fun, and people sharing stories of how it shifted for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some ways. Let's go a little bit down to the ground level and talk a little bit about how people can use this in their daily work lives. Because I have found that I use inner work now to do all kinds of things. So I use it to set priorities for my day.
Yep.
I use it to tune in about work opportunities. right? I check in with myself. Now, I trust my gut a lot more about who to collaborate with, about potential clients, about potential consulting gigs, about speaking engagements. If I have a speaking engagement, what's the topic that's going to resonate most deeply with the group that's gathering for this event?
Right.
And I am sometimes surprised. My conscious mind will have one idea or maybe a couple of ideas, and when I center and ground and just allow something to bubble up, it could be quite different. So and it's not about saying no to the conscious mind stuff. It's like, oh, well, so that's interesting. How did my conscious mind reach those conclusions? Is there anything I want to keep from that? And how do I integrate? Right. But using intuition, my intuitive knowing is the core around which the other stuff is supporting, so it's no longer just. Does that make sense at all?
It does. It's a lot of what I hear is when your intention is to serve, which is, I think, one of the deep one of the core practices for working with inner work is to be focused on serving. And you mentioned being grounded, and that's where to start off I used to do this and didn't really realize what I was doing, but I would always take a few moments just to be quiet, center through my breath, and set an intention, and setting the intention to be in alignment with life, to be of service, whatever language makes sense and resonates deeply. But it's not about can I win the lottery? Can I? It's more can I be of the greatest possible benefit in this situation? And that alone is huge. That piece of setting intention, I think is I think of it as both how to have maximal impact and also kind of like an insurance policy. It's that when you're tuning in, you're saying, this is what I'm really asking for. I'm really asking to serve, and I'm really and my deepest faith is that in doing that it's the best possible outcome, not only for others but for me as well, and that I'm part of the equation, and that so being practical then is that you can use inner work as a there are aspects of inner work that are like binary system, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, like true, false, like is this a good way forward? Or you make a statement, actually, this is a good way forward, yes or no, in whatever context you've framed. So you say, given my purpose of serving this client, this is a good way forward. Then you could, what I have learned, very practically speaking, if I say this is a good way forward, I might get that's confirmed. But then it's really important to ask, are there other ways forward that would be more beneficial? Because I often, the answer to that is often yes. And so then it's to open out my thinking instead of what my rational mind has come up with, to really listen. And sometimes it's that I need to expand my research. I need to consider more options. It's not like what I'm putting on the table is too small, it's too big, or it's too something. I don't know if we're making it sound more complicated.
So here, why don't you walk me through, because I've had the pleasure of witnessing you work this way. So, say you have a speaking engagement, right, and you're speaking to a group over lunch. You've got 20 minutes. How might you decide what you're going to speak about, or how you're going to frame the topic?
One of my first things would be to really talk to the client and find out as much as I can about who's going to be there and what their goals are. And then I will, I'll sit in meditation and I'll ask to serve this group, and I'll invite a guiding image that represents that group, and which I found to be like paradoxical sometimes, really interesting. So that whatever the image might be. So sometimes I've had images where it's like a star with 5 points, for example, and in that and that was a guiding image for a consulting piece of work, and that there were 5 points was really significant. But whatever the image will be, and it doesn't have anything to, it could be working with a group that's focused on transportation, and I might get an image that's a butterfly or a bouquet of flowers. It's nothing literal in my inner world, but it will shape. It becomes an anchor and a reference point, and then I can develop. It's almost like I can use that image as a mirror, so I can have a conversation with it, or I can present it with various options and see whether it brightens or withers, or it's like it becomes a way of tapping into the energy of that group. That would be sort of to get the broad topic, and then I can use inner work. I'll often do a dialogue to ask, what does this group most need, and how can I best serve this group? And I'll get a very broad, high-level picture of what would serve a group.
When you say dialogue, what does that mean?
That means that I'm at that point I often move to a way of working that's called automatic writing.
Okay.
Where I'm in a kind of I've done the grounding and centering work, and then I'm writing, and on the left-hand margin I'll put K for Kate, and ask a question, and then I'll put whatever some initial for the group, for this image for the group, and let it respond. So
interesting.
I'll do a dialogue with the group, and sometimes I'll do a dialogue with my inner wisdom about the group, so those are two different ways in. That is, in the space of 4 or 5 minutes, I will get to the nuggets. I'll get to the gold.
Right.
And then I typically will work more more deliberatively, but I'll check back to see if I'm still on track.
Yeah.
Checking with inner work. I don't tend to write speeches. I tend to map the main elements.
Yeah.
And then work to get so that I'm speaking off book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of just want to recap that. So you talked about grounding and centering. Well, you talked about, first of all, just talking to your client, researching, doing, an input mode.
Right.
And then grounding and centering, doing some meditation, finding a guided image, and some automatic writing. Did I miss anything? Those are 3 that I noticed.
Yeah.
And using the guiding image as a touchstone throughout.
I want in the grounding and centering, for me, the setting intention piece.
Yeah.
You've been doing it long enough that's automatic for you. Like you include that, but it's really important. There's, I think in groundwork, 3 pieces. One is the grounding, centering. The second is setting intention, and the third one is opening, and being trusting or choosing to trust the process of inner work and inner knowing.
Yeah. Because
stuff will come in that's against or it's contrary to our personality and contrary to our ego, and it's almost like we have an aperture, and if we don't, it's like we'll only let in a certain amount,
Right.
and if we open out, we can let in way more. But that's a conscious. It's our choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the third piece of the groundwork.
I think I agree with you that getting clarity on purpose and setting an intention to be of service has been one of the most transformative aspects, actually, for me. And I think it's interesting because there are so many business thought leaders who work to reorient entrepreneurs to thinking about service, being of service, right? So, and I know as an entrepreneur, I'm constantly reading things that are reminding me to focus on the customer, to look at things through my customer's eyes, and always to be shifting my language to be, how can, what am I doing for you? What's the benefit for you? And all of that stuff.
Right.
But there's a real textural difference between doing that as a conscious thought process,
right,
so that I'm writing my copy that, so that it speaks to my customer. I mean, obviously, in order to do that, I need to set the intention that I'm going to be of service. But to get up every day and begin my work day, which is my practice, to sit down and just it takes 10 seconds to take 2 deep breaths and just set the intention. I'm here to be of service. Here's my purpose. This is what I'm here to do. And then go forward with that. It's deeply transforming. It just infuses everything about my day, so that it lets me let go of the inbox or the whatever. It's like I'm focused and I'm purposeful and I'm more joyful. It's so much more fun to be of service than to be obsessing over my follower count or my revenues or whatever. It's not that those things don't matter. They become supporting. It's supporting the bigger work.
Well, I have a question for you. Yeah. I'm wondering, was that an easy shift for you to make, or was there a little hiccup of, will I be okay if I kind of turn my life over to being of service?
Yeah, of course. There's I still encounter resistance to that. For sure, there are definitely days when that's harder than others, and I think, but I think that the key, one of the things I've really appreciated about your writing, is that you talk about that trust, building that trust muscle, and I think for me that's been the key. It's like, because you have done it, I trust that trust works. I can see how it plays out. Like Kate is a very successful consultant, and I can see the impact she's had in her life, and so I know, it's like, I know this works. I know this is a successful and meaningful way of working, and everyone I know who's worked with you, it speaks about your integrity, right? And I'm not saying that to flatter you. No. I just mean it's like, well, I think, and it's like when you go out into the world with that kind of integrity, it radiates in a very different way. Your impact actually, I think, really increases in a way, because people can see, you bring that into the group, into whatever the situation that you're working in, and everybody does. The fact that you are there bringing that trust into the group means everybody settles. There's just there's this grounding into it, Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. Completely. It's my theoretically, it does as well. Like, there's whole frameworks that illuminate that piece. And just because it's such a hicking up point for so many people, the trust. And I love that you reiterate the idea of muscle, because that's been my journey. Like, I didn't initially trust.
Yeah.
I didn't trust what I got when I did the writing practices in the early 1990s, and I was what was so much fun was that I'm doing writing, and right in the moment, I'm getting commentary on what's going on in my personality which was to say, experiment with trusting. Okay, you don't trust,
Mm.
that's fine. Doubt is normal.
Right.
And just experiment. Try honoring what you're receiving and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. And you talk about like find baby steps, find small, not totally inconsequential, but smaller consequence things in your life to experiment with.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's been a journey for me, and when I was saying earlier that I completely trust my intuition, that trust has been earned because I've had I did start with baby steps, and I kept going because it worked, and so it's so we were talking another time about the idea of what's your secret mission, and the piece about inner work is that it's the different ways of doing inner work are screamingly effective, but the real benefit to my mind is that inner shift into greater alignment with what is most alive and most aligned and most juiciest, and where there's most joy and flow and grace.
Yeah.
Which comes from developing. What happens when what's happened for me is that because I've worked with these tools and these approaches, I get to the place now where I have a kind of a constant warmer, hotter, colder feedback. Like I can look at something, trivially, I can look at a menu and things will pop out for me of what would be good for me to eat, and then I can.
And that's a great low consequence, low stakes decision to play with, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But that process of getting more, like I feel more at home in who I am, and I feel I am more effective, and my life keeps getting better because I've made being in alignment my primary piece, and that's that groundwork piece. That's like it's so. I wish it for everyone. I really wish it, and it wasn't where I started though. It's
right.
It's like and you don't have to start there, but it's. I think.
But that's their secret mission.
That's a secret mission, and I think people are more and more open to that because I think there's a real. I'm experiencing in conversations. There's a real hunger. There's a real recognition that we're out of alignment. That our society is disconnected, and people are looking for greater meaning and more purpose. And so those, yeah.
And what's that quote about, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you most alive, and that, because that's what the world needs, right? And that's, I really believe that that's true. I really believe that if the world were full of people who were in flow and in alignment and connected to their desire to be of service, in whatever way that looks for them, I just think it would revolutionize everything.
One piece that comes in relation to that is the whole work-life balance piece, and I have found that when I'm paying attention to my inner guidance system, and I don't always. Sometimes I lose it.
You're not perfect in every way.
I'm not perfect in every way. Yeah.
Oh, this talk is over.
I no longer beat myself up when I forget to be paying attention. But the one of the things was a sort of revelation to me, like a big aha, was that it was holistic. It wasn't just when I was listening for my inner knowing about how to allocate my time in a day, for example, it would include my family life and my social life and my physical health and my bank balance health. And it was holistic. It wasn't the way I had functioned previously as an entrepreneur and a consultant, where it was like, now I'm in work mode.
Right.
Now I'm in having
Domestic
fun
mode.
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever.
right. Yeah. It was much more organic, and so one instance that came up was I have a great aunt who's 107, and I phoned her from time to time, and I hadn't phoned her, and it came up as something for me to do, and just for a short call because I was really busy. But I wouldn't at the personality level. I never would have included that in my day. But I felt so jazzed.
Right.
Like it was just absolutely the right thing for me to have done. I could tell I was in alignment when I made that call. Yeah.
Okay. Well, now I want to just say that we've talked a lot about this as individual work, and you have also written extensively about how this can work in groups, and that might be the topic for another conversation. But I kind of want to plant that seed and to also say, is there anything you want to tease people with about that? Because I say that because I think, a lot of the people who visit my blog, they have teams that they work with. They're trying to, motivate and set a vision for their staff and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's important to just highlight that this isn't just about locking yourself in your office or in your bedroom and, thinking deeply and silently about life. Right. It's stuff that you can take forward into your interactions with others.
Yes. So that's very well said. Because my mind is now going in 1,000 directions. I think what you can say is everything that can be done at the individual level can be done at the group level. And the thing that's most miraculous and astounding is that when a group of people is comfortable with the practice of aligning themselves to their inner knowing, that there is coherence. So a group lined up to its inner knowing there's a unified field. It's not like we all become blandly the same. Each of us are bringing our pieces, but there is a harmony that one can, and resonance that you can get to much more quickly than through debate, discussion, dialogue, consensus. It's very revolutionary.
Okay, well, we should talk about that more another time. But I do want to just echo that and say that one of the things I've noticed about this work is that when you give other people permission to use it in your presence, that they light up, typically. Or they'll throw up resistance which is totally fine. I'm happy with people reacting however they want to. But a lot of the time, I mean, if I just say, what does your gut tell you? People feel so relieved to be able to tell you.
Right. Yeah.
to be able to have that listened to.
Right.
And it drops them out of the monkey brain stuff that we all do, right? And to just say, well, if you take a deep breath and, and you really listen to your heart, like, what feels lighter and more purposeful? What feels heavy about this, or whatever language you want to use, but when you can drop them in to that other way of seeing. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Yeah, it's really so sweet. I think that's what it is. It's sweet.
Yeah, it's fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yay.
Yay.
Thank you all for joining us.
Yes.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.